The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Alberta Canola Producers Commission, SAS Canola, and Manitoba Canola Growers.
Debra Murphy here. We are at Farm Tech, joined by Clint, Jurke, and Greg, Sekulic. And we today are talking about the Crop Production Innovation Team. Is that correct? Clint, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, our crop production team, crop production innovation team is our full title, but we are a group of agronomy specialists that we try to provide value to the overall canola industry by interacting with a much wider part of the value chain overall, like working with researchers along with agronomists, along with growers, to make sure that we are growing this crop as profitably and as sustainably as possible. So that's kind of our overall goal of the crop production innovation team.
So what do you offer above or that's different from a regular agronomist?
Well, our model is that we're really focused on training the trainer. And so agronomists are often the direct interface with producers to provide the best management practices for any production issue that a grower might have. Where we see our value is that we train the agronomists to provide those best management practices, and oftentimes we are working directly with the researchers themselves to craft those best management practices. A good example would be on clubroot as an example. What is the best way to control clubroot? So we've worked a lot with the clubroot researchers to determine, you know what, clubroot resistance deployed ahead of clubroot is actually a really good way to keep clubroot resting spores from building up and to prevent that disease from really spreading more aggressively. And so like that would be an example of a new message that we've worked with researchers in order to help develop, and we're extending that to the agronomists in the industry who help filter that down to the producers themselves.
And the team is Canada-wide?
Yes, yeah. So we've got agronomists in all three prairie provinces, and each agronomy specialist has an area of specialty in which they work in. Like Gregory, as an example, is our sustainability and beneficial insect lead, and we'll have a clubroot lead, a blackleg lead, insect pest lead, and so each agronomist or agronomy specialist is really focused on working with researchers and the wider industry in one area of specialty overall.
So maybe Greg, I'll ask you, what does a typical day look like for an agronomy specialist?
Oh wow, I don't think I could actually pin down a typical day. It's in spite of the fact that we have fewer and fewer field responsibilities, that still does form a pretty central core of our day-to-day operations. So definitely be available in the piece to because that's my region is Northern Alberta, and I actually want to point out 4 provinces. I actually also represent British Columbia. Yeah. So, yeah. But. So field responsibilities then would include helping out with diagnostic problems when they do arise in the field. So I'm definitely available for those sorts of things. But as well, I sit on a couple of different groups and organizations, again around the beneficial insects and sustainability angle, aimed at developing metrics to determine what the sustainability of our cropping practices actually are and whether they are or are not sustainable. I get to liaise with basically the international research community on a lot of these topics surrounding sustainability, be it soil and water conservation, or my passion, I guess, would be the beneficial insect ecology. And it's actually pretty fascinating that I've been basically allowed to attend these academic conferences and field tours over a pretty substantial portion of the canola growing regions of the planet, and learn what I can there, and then bring it back here to incorporate into our best management practices as well. With that, I've also been in leading, I guess, the pollinators and honeybee health efforts at Council as well. So working with the various organizations, the Honeybee Health Coalition out of the United States and the Bee Health Roundtable in Canada, basically to establish dialogue between farmers and beekeepers to prevent the sorts of incidents that we saw in Ontario in 2012, and working with then our growers to extend best management practices to preserve and enhance their populations as much as possible. So a typical day is really purveying a lot of information. and be it personally to a farmer in the field or via a webinar internationally, or even attendance at a conference in Winnipeg, in Des Moines, Iowa, in Malmo, Sweden. It depends on the topic at hand.
And you mentioned that you're bringing a lot of information back to Canada. What else do you see as a positive for the Canadian canola industry and your role in this?
To me, it's the amount of exposure and the interaction that we have with the global research community. In my avenues, it's been beneficial insects and pest insects to some extent as well. Soil and water conservation is like those are. I'm a zero-till zealot. I come from soil and water conservation, so it's awesome that we have such a relationship with the international research community that we can email or call people at these institutions all over North America, in Australia, in Northern Europe, and get answers to emerging problems that we have. Insects, for example, that are spreading into our regions, we can learn from the British what their interactions with various midges and like cabbage stem flea beetles, as well as pollen beetles, which are expanding out of their range in eastern Canada, especially as the temperature warms. We're going to see these sorts of things moving into our production areas. So it gives us the opportunity to learn what the people in other canola growing regions have not only had to deal with, but the solutions that they've had and what hasn't worked. And that certainly goes back to the work that we do with Clubroot as well.
Mm-hmm. So Clint, sorry, did you want to add something there?
Oh, no, well, actually, yeah, I would like to add something, because Greg is a really good example of what an agronomy specialist contributes to the industry, especially like your Bees Matter campaign. Greg is one of the public faces of the whole Bees Matter, which has a lot of doing a lot of really good work at interfacing with the public and showing, hey, canola contributes a lot to bee health, and that there's a really beneficial relationship between bees and bee health and the canola industry. And so he's done an excellent job at putting a public face to the canola industry in that regard.
Mm-hmm. So if we're interested, whether it's an agronomist or farmer, and we have a specific interest in canola, how do we find which specialist to talk to?
Well, yeah, each of our agronomy specialists, and we do like to refer to ourselves as agronomy specialists, because we are doing a lot more than what I wouldn't want to say a typical agronomist, but what most agronomists do offer. And so that specialist role is pretty important, or pretty central to what we do. The Canola Council webpage is a good place to see, like, if there is an issue in a particular geography. Each of us agronomy specialists, we do maintain a territory in addition to our area of specialty. But on our website as well, we do have a listing of the areas of specialty each agronomy specialist is responsible for. So yeah, that's one of our major vehicles. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I would definitely add the resource that we have available as part of the Canola Watch website. You're going to find all of our specialties, areas of expertise in there as well, along with articles that we've written on those topics, and the cataloged history of 7 years now of weekly Canola Watch articles that are regularly updated with the most modern science that we have available to us. That's actually a pretty huge resource.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to learn about the team and all of your specialists.
Thank you very much. Thanks.